Well, welcome back to Thoughts While Thinking. And we are going to talk about rearranging our prejudices, I guess, today. And the opinions here are mine and mine alone and nobody else's. And we'll just keep it that way, and maybe it'll keep me out of trouble and somebody else too. Uh, but anyway, we'll rearrange our prejudices. I don't think I'm doing that right now. I think I'm really thinking. I think I'm in that 2% of that doing that thinking. And I think that that's probably going to cause me to be offensive or something because I'm expressing what I'm thinking. So, anyway, today we're talking about something that's probably in the news and being kicked around, and there's a lot of information out there. And I'm just going to tell you, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would do this. I would remind you back in 1953, Joseph McCarthy. He was fighting this communist business, and he was ridiculed, and he had to run out of town, and he was all that because nobody would believe him, and everybody just put him down, and he was just a real comical face as far as the news was concerned. The news was back then wasn't out in the open like they are today, but they tried to make it look like they was covered all on one side. And Walter Cronkite, he thought he was putting the wool over the eyes, but some of us recognized he was doing the same thing. He was just being real shifty about it. So I'd also remind you about the secret government we got. We got the one that's working, and it may be the one that is putting the stuff up on the teleprompter for President Biden. I don't know. But anyway, back in 2007, on April the 5th, then Vice President Biden says we're really set right now for one world order. And it's obvious that where we're going, or at least that's, if I was a conspiracy theorist, that's what I'd be telling you. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would point out to you that Obama and George Soros were just real big buddies, and they were seen a lot in public. And, that's where the war on police got started, and that's where we got the dividing between the blacks and the whites. We just had to convince and start an issue and start some problems. I'd remind you of that. And I would also remind you that the Second Amendment does not grant us the right to bear arms. I'd remind you that the Second Amendment denies the government the authority to infringe upon our right to bear arms. And there's a big difference there. And the masses are not looking at the difference on that. We just want to make that out there where you can see it. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would talk about in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, every high school in the countries pickup was full. The parking lot was full of pickups with guns in the back window. And so what has changed? Well, some people say, well, the kids are different this day and age. Well, I don't think the kids are different. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that the parents are different, and they're the ones that's teaching these kids and letting them get by with all this stuff. And the kids are just reflecting on the parents' thoughts and teachings. So the kids are just going wild because they don't have any supervision. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd talk about this AR-15. And that AR-15 is the topic of a lot of conversation right now. But that old AR-15, it's just a tool. But the masses are saying that, well, that's how men think they're going to have to be men because they got to have all these guns and stuff to be men. Well, maybe us old alpha males that they're trying to tame down and feminize. Maybe we're responsible for that. Maybe we didn't stand up when they started pulling this woke business, and this woke business kind of shuts down that old alpha male. They want these men that have been feminized and before they won't go out and cause a lot of trouble. And they made the woke man, and he just sitting there and he just what people are getting confused on. Those kids are confused about all that. But this old alpha male here, this toxic male, he's part of the people that made this country the greatest in the world, and in my high standard of living. You know, the poverty scale here is in lots of countries would be on the rich side and the wealthy side. So the old toxic male, we did some good, or our ancestors did some good. And we sit here and talk to these women, and the women talk to us, and we try to understand one another, and we try to move forward and do what's best. And we have a little romance going there sometimes, and we walk through the woods and the briars and the brambles. But now then, we got this deal about that AR-15 and guns, and the TV is sitting there and the radio and sitting there telling you how awful the guns are. They're causing all the trouble. And their little munchkin sitting behind them there is playing his little game, and he's got those game guns, and he's just killing people by the thousand. And he's hollering, kill 'em, kill 'em, kill 'em. Now, let that warp your mind on that a little bit on that conspiracy theories. And, you know, us male man and woman, we communicate. We work together. We're in business together. And we got to remember there's a X and a Y. And there ain't no in between the X and the Y. It's a X and a Y. And that's what I would say if I was a conspiracy theorist. And I would also point out that right now we're doing doing a real good job of making everything equal to where nobody's being abused on one side or the other. Everybody having equal opportunity. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would tell you that that ain't true. But old James Mason says crisis is the rallying cry of a tyrant. Well, how many crises have we had in the last couple of years? I mean, to tell you, it's just one crisis after another, and we just can't get over these crises. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would want to point out to you that the assertion that my family must be made defenseless in order for you to feel safe is a rallying cry, and I would point that out. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would look at this. I would say, well, you know, if the government's treating us like they are right now, what will they do when they take away all our guns? Well, that's a little conspiracy theorist that I might be. And I would remind you that in 1774, the British confiscated and banned all the guns from those colonists, and they didn't like that. And so, as a friendly reminder, they caused a revolution in 1776, and that may be a history lesson that we forgot about. And you know, if we don't have a conspiracy going on in the government, it's kind of hard to think about if the people in the government are really that stupid. Well, I don't know which one of those sides would be the worst. But I do know this old toxic male here, this alpha male, he's the one that helped build this country into what it is today. And George Orwell, in his 1984 book, you know, he reminded that all tyrants rule through fraud and force, and then once the fraud is exposed, they must exclusively rely on force. And we're getting forced into a lot of stuff right now. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd point that out. And I would also remind you that murder is illegal. Attempted murder is illegal. And a felon owning a gun is illegal. And shooting indiscriminately is illegal. And criminals do not go by the law. And I'd explain to you that the criminals will not follow the law. And I would ask you to explain how any new law is going to make us safer, and how they're going to get those criminals to abide by it. Uh, you know, these gun laws, all they do is affect the law-abiding good citizens. And when plunder becomes a way of life, a group of men in a society, over a course of time, they create themselves a legal system that authorizes a moral code that glorifies that. And is that where we are? If I was a conspiracy theorist, I think I'd point that out to you. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd point out that evil does not exist within the gun itself. It exists in the minds of and the hearts of those who pull the trigger for evil purposes. Now, that's the way I would explain it to you. And I would also remind you that when I was young, I was taught right and from wrong. And this day and age, it looks to me like a lot of people are trying to convince others that wrong is right. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd try to explain that to you. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say sometimes you have to play the role of a fool to fool the fool who thinks he's fooling you. Well, I think that's where we got to do today if I was a conspiracy theorist, to fool the fools. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would point out, like this young fella here says, my teacher told me guns kill people. And he says, I told her that my pencil failed the math exam. Well, I think that little fella's got it about right. I think he's nailed it down. And I'd also remind you that no matter how you feel about guns, you should educate yourself with the historical truth of disarmed populations. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd remind you that over and over. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd remind you that I saw a movie once where only the police and the military had guns. And that was Schindler's List. Maybe we need to go back and watch that movie again. And Anne Ryan, she says, you can't ignore reality, but the consequences of it you can't ignore. So I would remind you of that the reality, you can look behind it, but it's still the real thing. And the oppressor is so strong because he has the support of those oppressed. Now that kind of reminds me of what's going on today, especially if I was a conspiracy theorist. And Ronald Reagan says, all these gun laws do is take it away from the law-abiding citizens. You got to figure out how to keep the criminals from acting up and doing things and getting guns and that sort of thing. So, we got to pay attention to that, and I would remind you of that. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would think about how sad it is that we're talking about praying for our schools when we won't allow prayer in our schools. Now, think about that, and if I was a conspiracy theorist. And, sometimes I wonder if the people are so smart in Washington that they're fooling us, or if they're just that stupid. Well, I'd remind you of that if I was a conspiracy theorist. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd just say that's my thoughts while thinking, and I'd move on and say adios amigos and see you on the flip side.